The USS Dauntless drifted silently through the empty void of space, its engines quiet and its lights dimmed to conserve power. Inside the command center, Captain Ethan Wright stared at the holographic display showing their current position, or, rather, their best guess of it. The ship's navigation system had been compromised after the warp drive malfunction, leaving them stranded in an uncharted sector with no familiar stars to guide them. "Status report," Wright said, his voice calm, despite the growing knot in his stomach. First Officer Lisa Monroe looked up from her console, her face grim. "Warp drive is completely offline, sir. Chief Miller says the containment field was damaged when we dropped out of warp. We're running on auxiliary power only." Wright nodded slowly. "Life support?" "Stable for now," Lisa replied. "But our supplies are another story. The 6-month expedition stretched our resources thin. According to inventory, we have food and water for 14 days at full rations. Maybe we can stretch it to 20 with careful rationing." The captain rubbed his tired eyes. The Dauntless was an exploration vessel, not built for extended emergencies. They had pushed their mission to the very edge of safe parameters, and now they were paying the price. Science Officer Amy Clark approached with a datapad in hand. "Sir, I've been scanning the surrounding space. There's an asteroid field about 6 hours away at impulse speed. It might contain materials we could use for repairs." "Any signs of habitable systems nearby?" Wright asked hopefully. Clark shook her head. "Nothing within sensor range. And with long-range communications down, we can't call for help." The door to the bridge slid open as Chief Engineer Frank Miller entered, his uniform stained with coolant fluid. "Captain, I've assessed the warp drive damage. It's worse than we thought. The primary coils are fried, and we don't have the parts to rebuild them." "How long to reach the nearest outpost on impulse?" Wright asked. Miller exchanged a look with Clark before answering. "At our current maximum safe speed, about 3 months, sir." The room fell silent as the reality of their situation sank in. 3 months of travel with 2 weeks of supplies. "Options, people," Wright said firmly, refusing to let despair take. Hold Security Chief Jack Porter spoke up from his station. "We could enter cryostasis, Captain. That would preserve supplies for the essential crew needed to pilot the ship." "Our cryopods are research models not meant for long-term use," Clark countered, "and they consume significant power. We'd be trading food shortage for energy shortage." Wright was about to respond when the ship's proximity alarm blared to life. All eyes turned to the main view screen. "Unknown vessel approaching, sir," Porter reported, his fingers flying over the tactical console. "Large, very large, about 5 times our size." "Origin?" Wright asked. "Unknown design," Clark said, studying her readings. "Definitely not from Earth or any of our allies. I'm not recognizing the energy signature from any known species in our database." The strange ship grew larger on the view screen, its design unlike anything they had seen before. The vessel was dark purple with sharp angular extensions that made it look like a predatory sea creature. "They're scanning us, sir," Porter warned. "Hail them," Wright ordered. "All frequencies. Standard first contact protocols." Monroe worked her communication panel. "No response, Captain." "Keep trying," Wright said, "and bring us to yellow alert just in case." Porter nodded and pressed a button. The ship's lighting shifted slightly as alert indicators began to pulse along the walls. "Wait," Monroe said suddenly. "We're receiving a transmission." The view screen flickered, revealing a humanoid figure with pale blue skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. Its head was hairless with ridged bone structures extending from the temples. When it spoke, its voice was translated through the ship's computer, sounding artificial and cold. "Attention, trespassing vessel. You have entered territory claimed by the Zithari Imperium. Identify yourselves and state your purpose immediately or be destroyed." Wright straightened his uniform and stepped. Captain Wright took a deep breath and faced the alien on the screen. "This is Captain Ethan Wright of the USS Dauntless, an exploration vessel from Earth. We mean no harm and did not intend to trespass. Our warp drive malfunctioned, leaving us stranded in this sector." The 4-eyed alien's expression remained unreadable. "I am Supreme Commander Vraxel of the Zithari Imperium. Your excuses are irrelevant. You will leave our territory immediately." "Right," tried to remain diplomatic. Commander Vraxel, I understand your concern, but as I explained, our warp drive is damaged. We cannot leave without repairs. We would be grateful for any assistance you could provide. The alien's upper eyes narrowed. The Zithari do not provide aid to lesser species. Your technological failures are not our concern. Lisa Monroe stepped forward. Commander, we are on a peaceful mission of exploration. We have limited supplies and damaged systems. Perhaps we could trade knowledge or silence, Vraxel interrupted. We have studied your vessel. Your weapons are minimal. Your shields, weak. You claim to be peaceful, yet you carry weapons. Typical human deception. Wright felt his patience wearing thin, but kept his voice even. All exploration vessels carry basic defenses. Space is full of natural dangers. We have no hostile intentions toward the Zithari. The alien commander made a gesture off-screen, and suddenly the Dauntless shook violently. Warning shot, Porter called out from tactical. They fired some kind of energy weapon across our bow. Minimal damage, but our shields dropped to 60% from just the energy splash. Vraxel's voice grew colder. That was merely a fraction of our power. You have 1 Earth day to surrender your vessel for inspection and prepare to be taken to a Zithari outpost for questioning. Otherwise, leave our territory or be destroyed. The screen went black before Wright could respond. They've cut communication and moved to a holding position about 10,000 kilometers away, Porter reported. Wright turned to his crew. Senior officers, meeting room now. 5 minutes later, the ship's leadership gathered around the small conference table. The room felt tense as everyone took their seats. Options? Wright asked simply. Frank Miller spoke first. I've been analyzing their ship, Captain. Their technology is beyond ours. That warning shot was nothing to them, but it nearly overloaded. Our shields, can we outrun them? Wright asked. No chance, Miller replied. At full impulse, we might reach the asteroid field, but they would catch us long before we got anywhere safe. Lisa looked worried. Could we surrender temporarily? Just to buy time? Jack Porter shook his head firmly. Bad idea. Their body language and tone suggest they view us as inferior. Once we surrender, we lose all leverage. They might just take our technology and leave us to die, or worse. What about the asteroid field Amy mentioned? Wright asked. Could it provide any advantage? Amy pulled up a holographic display of the field. It's dense enough to provide some cover. Their larger ship might have trouble following us through the tighter passages, but without weapons or shields, it's just delaying the inevitable. Miller suddenly sat up straighter. Unless... Everyone turned to him. Unless what, Frank? Wright prompted. What if we could repurpose our remaining antimatter fuel cells? They're not enough to power the warp drive, but if we modified them, we could create improvised weapons. Is that even possible? Lisa asked. Miller nodded slowly. Dangerous, but possible. We'd be using up our fuel reserves, though. It would be a one-way trip wherever we ended up. Amy studied the asteroid field readings more closely. Wait, there's something else. These readings suggest the asteroids contain traces of dilithium and other rare minerals. If we could mine them, we might be able to repair the warp drive. Miller finished, excitement growing in his voice. Wright looked around the table. So we have 2 options. Surrender to an unknown but clearly hostile species, or take our chances with a desperate plan. I vote for the desperate plan, Porter said immediately. One by one, each officer nodded in agreement. Then it settled, Wright said, standing up. Frank, start working on those makeshift weapons. Amy, I need detailed scans of those asteroids. Lisa, prepare a small team for a potential mining operation. Jack, get everyone ready for possible combat situations. As they left the room, Wright felt the weight of his decision. They were taking an enormous risk, but with their supplies dwindling and an enemy at their door, what choice did they have? Forward. Their bad situation had just gotten much worse. The engineering bay of the USS Dauntless buzzed with urgent activity. Chief Engineer Frank Miller stood at a workbench, surrounded by dismantled equipment and tools. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he carefully modified an antimatter containment cell. Careful with that coupling, he warned a junior engineer. One wrong connection and we'll have more than the Zithari to worry about. Across the ship, Science Officer Amy Clark led a team analyzing the asteroid field data. Her fingers moved quickly over the display, highlighting mineral deposits. There, she said, pointing to a cluster of readings. These 3 asteroids show the highest concentration of materials we need. The radiation levels are high, but if we modify our shuttle's shields, we should be able to mine them safely. In the security section, Jack Porter drilled crew members on emergency combat procedures. Most of the Dauntless crew were scientists and explorers, not soldiers, but they learned quickly with survival at stake. Remember, Porter instructed, aim for their lower eyes. Based on their physiology, that's likely their visual weakness. On the bridge, Captain Wright and First Officer Monroe finalized their plan. The shuttle is our best option, Monroe said. It's small enough to navigate the asteroid field, and with some modifications we might be able to mask its energy signature. Wright nodded. How many people will you need? 4 should do it. Me, 1 engineer, and 2 for security. Wright looked at her with concern. It's extremely dangerous, Lisa. If they detect you, it's our only chance, Captain, she replied, firmly. Besides, they'll be focused on the Dauntless. That's where you come in. Wright sighed. Yes, I get to keep our blue friends occupied while you do the real work. A young communications officer named Sam Bennett approached them. Captain, I've been monitoring the Zithari. They're maintaining position, but their weapons systems remain active. Thank you, Sam, Wright said. Keep watching them. I want to know if anything changes. The captain called the senior staff for a final briefing. As they gathered, Miller arrived with a small device in his hands. Our first prototype, he announced, placing it on the table. I've modified 1 fuel cell into what's basically a high-powered energy bomb. We have enough material for 3 more. Will it damage their ship? Porter asked. Miller shrugged. Hard to say. Their technology is advanced, but antimatter doesn't care how advanced you are. At minimum, it should disrupt their shields temporarily. And our mining operation? Wright asked, turning to Clark. Amy displayed a holographic map. I've plotted the safest route through the asteroid field. The shuttle will need to reach this location, she pointed to a distant cluster, extract the minerals, and return without being detected. We've modified the shuttle's deflector dish to emit a dispersal field, Miller added. It won't make them invisible, but it should confuse sensors enough to mask their specific energy signature. What about the crew's life support? Wright asked. How does this affect our supplies? We've had to divert resources, Lisa admitted. Everyone's now on half rations. We have enough for 10 days instead of 14. The room fell silent as the reality of their situation sank in. If this works, Miller said finally, none of that will matter. We'll have a functioning warp drive. And if it doesn't? Porter asked the question everyone was thinking. Then we make sure the Zithari remember never to corner humans again, Wright said grimly. The plan was set in motion. The shuttle crew prepared for launch while the engineers finished the makeshift weapons. In his quarters, Wright recorded a log entry. Captain's log, emergency entry. We face impossible odds, but I've never been prouder of this crew. They've shown incredible ingenuity and courage. In less than 8 hours, they've created weapons from fuel cells, modified our shuttle for stealth, and prepared for a mining operation in dangerous conditions. If humans have one true advantage in this universe, it's our ability to adapt and overcome when backed into a corner. The Zithari are about to learn that lesson. As Wright finished his log, the ship's communication system activated. Captain to the bridge, Sam Bennett's voice came through. The Zithari are hailing us. Captain Wright sat tall in his command chair as the image of Supreme Commander Vraxel appeared on the view screen. The alien's 4 eyes seemed to study him with cold calculation. Your time is half expired, human, Vraxel said. Have you made your decision? Wright leaned forward slightly. We're considering your offer, Commander. However, surrender is a serious matter for humans. Our protocols require extensive documentation and preparation. The alien's upper eyes narrowed. Protocols are irrelevant. You will submit or be destroyed. I understand your position, Wright said calmly. But I must consider the safety of my crew. Perhaps we could negotiate terms. For example, we would need guarantees about treatment of our people, access to our supplies, and there will be no negotiations, Vraxel interrupted. You are not in a position to make demands. Wright feigned frustration. Then we need more time. Our ship's systems were damaged in the warp malfunction. We're still assessing what data and technology must be secured before any transfer of control. Behind him, Monroe gave a subtle nod and slipped off the bridge. The shuttle mission was ready to launch. You test my patience, Captain, Vraxel said. I will grant you 6 more hours, no more. Prepare your crew and systems for inspection. The screen went dark. They've ended transmission, Sam Bennett reported from communications. Sir, while they were talking, I noticed something odd about their signal. What kind of odd? Wright asked, walking to the communication station. There are patterns I can identify, Bennett explained. With some modifications to our translation algorithms, I might be able to partially decode their internal communications. Wright put a hand on the young officer's shoulder. Do it. Any intelligence on their plans could save our lives. In the shuttle bay, Monroe strapped herself into the pilot's seat of the small craft. Engineer Olivia Kelly sat beside her, while 2 security officers checked their equipment in the rear compartment. Shuttle Galileo to bridge, Monroe called. We're ready for launch. Understood, Wright's voice came through the comm. Launch when ready. We'll create a small power surge to mask your departure signature. Monroe took a deep breath. Here goes nothing. The shuttle slipped out of the bay and immediately activated its modified deflector dish. The small craft banked sharply away from the Dauntless and accelerated toward the distant asteroid field. In engineering, Miller and his team worked frantically to convert scientific equipment into makeshift weapons. They had managed to create 4 antimatter bombs and were now reinforcing the ship's shields. These power couplings were never designed for this kind of load, a technician complained. Miller grinned. Neither were humans designed to survive in space, but here we are. Make it work. Hours passed as the shuttle navigated through the dangerous asteroid field. Inside the small craft, radiation alarms blared constantly. Radiation levels rising, Kelly warned. The shields won't hold indefinitely. Monroe adjusted their course, weaving between floating rocks. We're almost there, just a little further. On the Dauntless, Sam Bennett worked intensely at his station, running the Zithari communications through various decryption algorithms. Suddenly, he sat up straight. Captain, I've got something, he called out. I can only understand parts of it, but they're definitely talking about us. Wright moved to his side. What are they saying? Bennett listened through his earpiece, his expression growing grim. They're calling for reinforcements, sir. I'm picking up signals being sent to other Zithari vessels. How many? Wright asked. At least 3 ships, and based on the time codes, they'll be here in approximately 48 hours. Wright closed his eyes briefly. 2 days. Their timeline had just been cut dramatically. Sir, Porter called from Tactical. The shuttle has reached the mining site. They're beginning extraction. Wright nodded. Keep monitoring them. Sam, continue. Decoding as much as you can. In the asteroid field, Monroe and her team had reached their destination. They deployed mining equipment onto the surface of a large asteroid rich with the minerals they needed. Beginning extraction, Kelly reported. Estimated time to completion 90 minutes. Just then a warning light flashed on the shuttle's console. Monroe frowned as she checked the reading. That can't be good, she muttered. A small crack had formed in the shuttle's outer hull, allowing dangerous radiation to seep in. Monroe stared at the warning light, her mind racing. The crack in the shuttle hull was small but growing. Olivia, get a repair kit, she ordered. We need to seal that breach now. Engineer Kelly grabbed an emergency patch kit and moved toward the damaged section. The radiation is affecting the hull integrity. This patch will only hold temporarily. Outside the shuttle, the 2 security officers continued mining the valuable minerals. Their suits' radiation counters beeped constantly, warning them of the danger. Hurry up, Monroe urged through the comm. We need to finish and get out of here as fast as possible. Back on the Dauntless, Wright updated Miller on their new timeline. 48 hours until reinforcements arrive, Wright said grimly. How's our progress? Miller wiped sweat from his brow. The weapons are ready, and we've boosted shields by 12%. Not much, but it's something. And the warp drive? Repairs? Miller's expression fell. That's the problem, Captain. Even with the minerals from the asteroid, we're missing a critical component for the warp coils. Without it, we can't restart the drive. Wright's heart sank. What kind of component? A quantum field stabilizer. Ours was fried in the malfunction. Can we build one? Miller shook his head. Not with what we have on board. But... He hesitated. But, what, Frank? This isn't the time to hold back. The Zithari ship would have something similar. Their technology is different, but based on the energy readings, they use a quantum field for their propulsion too. Wright stared at his chief engineer. Are you suggesting we steal a part from the alien ship that's threatening to destroy us? Crazy, I know, Miller admitted, but it might be our only option. The captain was silent for a moment. How would we even get aboard their vessel? We've been working on modifying the emergency teleporter. It's only designed for short-range transport, but with some adjustments we might reach their ship. The problem is we'd only have enough power for one trip. Whoever goes would have no way back except to find their shuttle bay or escape pods. Dorsey, comm system beeped. Bridge to Captain, Porter's voice came through. The shuttle is on its way back. They got the minerals, but they're reporting hull damage. I'm on my way, Wright replied. On the bridge, Porter gave Wright a full update. They're approaching now, sir. The shuttle was damaged by radiation, but they managed to extract enough minerals. They should dock in 20 minutes. Tell them to hurry, Wright said. Our situation just got more complicated. As the crew worked frantically, food and water supplies dwindled faster than expected. The increased activity demanded more energy from everyone, and despite rationing, supplies were disappearing at an alarming rate. In the mess hall, crew members received their half rations with grim faces. Hunger was becoming a constant companion, adding to the stress of their desperate situation. Wright called an emergency meeting with all senior officers. As they gathered, Monroe joined them, having just returned from the shuttle mission. The good news is we got the minerals, she reported, her face showing exhaustion. The bad news is the shuttle took heavy damage. We won't be able to use it, again without extensive repairs. Wright nodded and turned to the group. We have 48 hours before Zithari reinforcements arrive. Frank has identified what we need to repair the warp drive, but there's a catch. He explained Miller's plan to raid the alien ship. Silence fell over the room. That's suicide, Porter finally said. Maybe. Wright agreed. But what's our alternative? We can't outrun them, we can't outfight them, and we'll starve if we try to. Hide. Miller projected a schematic of the Zithari ship based on their scans. Their engineering section is likely here. That's where we'd find the component we need. How many people for the boarding party? Monroe asked. Minimum 4, Miller said. 2 for security, 1 engineer to identify and remove the component, and 1 to lead. Wright stood up. I'll lead the boarding party. Captain? No, Monroe objected. You can't risk yourself. This is my responsibility, Wright said firmly. I won't order anyone to go on a mission I wouldn't undertake myself. Jack will come for security, Frank for technical expertise, and 1 more security officer. No one argued. They all knew time was running out. While we're gone, Wright continued, Lisa will command the Dauntless, Amy and her team will prepare the warp drive for the new component, and Sam will keep monitoring Zithari communications. When do we leave? Porter asked. Wright checked the time. We have 18 hours until our surrender deadline. We go in 12. The boarding party gathered in the transporter room. Captain Wright checked his modified spacesuit one last time. They had reinforced the standard exploration suits with extra plating salvaged from non-essential areas of the ship. Each person carried a makeshift energy weapon created from repurposed scientific equipment. Remember, Wright said to his team, our only objective is to get the quantum field stabilizer and get out. No heroics, no exploration. Porter nodded as he adjusted his weapon. The teleporter will put us as close to their engineering section as we can tell from our scans. We'll likely have about 15 minutes before they organize a serious response to our presence. Miller checked the small device in his hand. This will help me identify the component we need. Their technology is different, but the basic principles should be similar. The fourth member of their team, Security Officer Greg Duncan, looked nervous, but determined. Ready, sir. On the bridge, First Officer Monroe took the captain's chair. Bridge to transporter room. The Zithari ship is maintaining position. Their shields appear to be at normal power. Understood, Wright replied. Execute diversion plan Alpha on my mark. Monroe nodded to Science Officer Clark, who activated a sequence on her console. Releasing modified probe now. The Dauntless launched a small probe that immediately began emitting energy signatures, mimicking a small fleet of vessels appearing at the edge of sensor range. The Zithari are responding, Porter reported from the bridge. They're diverting power to their weapon systems and turning to face the new signals. Their shields are fluctuating on their port side, Clark added. Power is being redirected. Now, Wright ordered. The transporter hummed to life. Wright felt the familiar tingling sensation as the teleporter took effect. The world around him dissolved and then reformed into a strange corridor with purple-tinted lighting. We're in, he whispered, looking around. The corridor was empty, but strange symbols glowed on the walls. The air was breathable but had a heavy, sweet smell. Miller consulted his device. Engineering should be this way. He pointed down the corridor to the right. The team moved cautiously, their footsteps making soft sounds on the metallic floor. They turned a corner and came face to face with two Zithari crew members who looked up in shock. Porter reacted instantly, firing his weapon. The energy pulse hit the first alien in the chest, sending it crumpling to the floor. Duncan took down the second one before it could reach an alarm panel. Move, Wright ordered, knowing their presence would be discovered soon enough. They hurried through the alien ship, following Miller's directions. After 2 more turns, they reached a large doorway that looked important. This should be it, Miller said. The door slid open automatically as they approached. Inside was a vast chamber filled with glowing equipment and control panels. 6 Zithari technicians worked at various stations. Cover me, Wright said, then stepped into the room, firing his weapon. Chaos erupted. The technicians dove for cover as Porter and Duncan followed, providing covering fire. Miller rushed in behind them, heading straight for what appeared to be the main power control system. An alarm began blaring throughout the ship, its high-pitched wail hurting the humans' ears. Hurry! Wright shouted as he ducked behind a console. Energy blasts from Zithari weapons hit the wall behind him, leaving scorch marks. Porter took a defensive position by the door. More coming. I count at least 8. Miller worked frantically at the alien control panel. Their technology is partially organic, he called out. It's responding to my touch differently than I expected. A Zithari security team appeared at the doorway, firing a volley of energy blasts. Duncan was hit in the shoulder and fell back with a cry of pain. Wright rushed to his side, dragging him behind cover. How bad? I'll live, Duncan grimaced, but my arm's useless. The captain pressed his communicator. Wright to Dauntless, status? The diversion is holding, but not for long, Monroe's voice came through. They've already determined the fleet signatures are fake. I estimate 3 minutes before they redirect full attention to their ship. Porter threw a small device down the corridor. It exploded with a brilliant flash, temporarily blinding the approaching Zithari troops. Got it! Miller suddenly shouted, in triumph. He held up a strange, pulsing blue cylinder. This is their version of the quantum field stabilizer. Better than ours, actually. Wright nodded. Everyone fall back to the extraction point. As they turned to leave, a massive blast rocked the doorway. Porter was thrown backward, landing hard on the floor. Jack, Wright called out. Porter struggled. To his feet, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. I'm okay, but our exit is blocked. Find another way out, Wright ordered, helping Duncan up with one arm while firing with the other. Move. Miller checked a small device on his wrist. There's another way, he said quickly. Their shuttle bay should be 2 levels down from here. Wright nodded. Lead the way. The team moved through the alien ship's corridors, Porter supporting the injured Duncan while Wright provided cover fire. More alarms sounded as they ran, and the voices of Zithari soldiers echoed behind them. "This way," Miller directed, pointing to a vertical tube that seemed to function as a lift. "It should take us down." As they approached, the tube lit up. Wright gestured for everyone to press against the walls as a platform rose into view carrying 4 armed Zithari. Porter didn't hesitate. He fired his weapon directly into the group, scattering them. "Go!" Wright ordered. They piled onto the platform. Miller pressed what looked like a control panel and they began to descend. The tube walls rushed by them, glowing with strange patterns. "Right to Dauntless," the captain called into his communicator. "Monroe, here," came the response, broken by static. "We're having trouble maintaining communications through their hull." "We've got the component," Wright said, "but our exit is cut off. We're heading for their shuttle bay." "Understood. We'll create another diversion to cover your escape." The platform stopped abruptly, opening to a new corridor. The team moved quickly, following Miller's directions. They encountered 2 more Zithari patrols, engaging in brief firefights before pushing forward. "There," Miller pointed ahead. "That should be the shuttle bay entrance." A massive door stood before them, sealed and locked. "Can you open it?" Wright asked. Miller studied the control panel. "I think so, but it'll take a minute." "We don't have a minute," Porter warned, looking back down the corridor where the sounds of approaching troops grew louder. Wright made a quick decision. "Use one of our bombs." Miller hesitated, then nodded. He pulled out one of the makeshift antimatter devices and placed it on the door. "Everyone back, this will be messy." They retreated around a corner as Miller activated the device. A massive explosion shook the entire corridor, followed by the screech of tearing metal. When they looked, the door was gone, replaced by a jagged opening. Beyond it lay the shuttle bay, containing several small craft of alien design. "Move." Wright ordered. They ran into the bay just as emergency force fields activated, preventing the atmosphere from venting into space. Zithari crew members scattered at their approach. "There." Porter pointed to a small shuttle. "That one looks like it has, a simple control system." They rushed to the craft. Miller examined the entrance, quickly figuring out how to open it. The team piled inside, Duncan groaning as they moved him onto a seat. "Can you fly this thing?" Wright asked Miller. "I'll have to," the engineer replied, studying the alien controls. Outside, Zithari troops poured into the shuttle bay. Energy. Blasts hit their stolen shuttle as Miller worked frantically to activate it. "Any time now, Frank," Porter urged, returning fire through the still-open door. "Almost got it," Miller muttered. The shuttle hummed to life, controls lighting up with alien symbols. "Hold on." The craft lurched forward, hovering above the bay floor. Miller manipulated what appeared to be navigation controls, aiming for the bay doors. "They're sealed," Porter shouted. "Not for long," Wright replied grimly. He grabbed their second bomb and placed it by the shuttle door. "Get us close to the bay doors." Miller maneuvered the shuttle toward the massive exit. Wright triggered the bomb's timer, then kicked it out the door toward the bay exit. "Move back," he yelled. Miller reversed the shuttle just as the bomb detonated. The bay doors buckled and tore apart, creating a hole large enough for their shuttle to pass through. Emergency force fields failed, and the violent decompression pulled everything toward the opening. "Now," Wright ordered. Miller pushed the controls forward. The shuttle shot through the opening, emerging into open space. Behind them, the Zithari ship's damaged bay was sealed by emergency protocols. "We made it," Duncan said weakly. "Not yet," Wright replied, looking out the viewport. The main Zithari vessel was turning, weapons charging. And in the distance, the Dauntless waited, shields up but clearly outmatched. Wright activated his communicator. "Dauntless, we've acquired transportation and the component. Prepare to receive us and jump to impulse the moment we're aboard." "Understood, Captain," Monroe responded. "But we have a problem. Long-range sensors just detected the Zithari reinforcements. They'll be here in less than an hour." The stolen Zithari shuttle raced toward the Dauntless as energy blasts from the alien vessel streaked past them. Miller struggled with the unfamiliar controls, making the small craft zigzag to avoid being hit. "They're gaining on us," Porter warned. Watching the pursuing ship through the rear viewport, Wright helped secure Duncan, whose condition was worsening. "How much longer to the Dauntless?" 2 minutes, Miller replied, his hands flying over the alien console. "Maybe less if I can figure out how to increase speed." On the Dauntless, Monroe ordered the ship to move closer. "Divert all available power to rear shields," she commanded. "Position us between the shuttle and the Zithari ship." The Dauntless moved into position, acting as a shield for the approaching shuttle. The larger Zithari vessel fired a barrage of energy blasts that rocked the human ship violently. "Shields down to 30%, Clark reported from her station. "We can't take much more of this." "Hold position," Monroe ordered. "Shuttle, what's your status?" Wright's voice came through with static. 1 minute to docking, the component is intact." In engineering, the team had prepared the warp drive for the new part. Everything was ready, waiting only for the quantum field stabilizer. The shuttle approached the Dauntless's emergency bay doors. Miller slowed the craft, struggling to match the docking procedures of the alien vessel with the human ship. "This isn't going to be pretty," he warned as the shuttle bumped roughly against the Dauntless. The airlock mechanisms strained to create a seal between the incompatible craft. "We have hard seal," a technician reported. "They're coming aboard." Wright carried the quantum field stabilizer while Porter helped the injured Duncan. They rushed through the airlock just as another hit from the Zithari ship rocked the Dauntless. "Get this to engineering now," Wright ordered, handing the component to a waiting crew member who sprinted away. Wright and Porter helped Duncan to the medical bay, then rushed to the bridge. Monroe vacated the captain's chair as Wright entered. "Status?" he demanded. "Shields at 20% and failing," Monroe reported. "Zithari reinforcements will be here in 40 minutes. Wright nodded grimly. "Time to warp drive restoration?" "Miller says 5 minutes to install the component and initialize." The ship shook again as another blast hit them. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. "We don't have 5 minutes, Wright said. "What about our last antimatter bomb?" Clark looked up from her console. "I've been analyzing their shield frequencies. Their shields resonate at a specific pattern when hit with the right energy signature. Can we exploit that?" Wright asked. "Maybe," Clark replied. "If we modified our remaining bomb to emit that specific frequency, it might disrupt their shields temporarily." Wright made a quick decision. "Do it. And prepare for a point-blank shot at their command center once their shields drop." "Captain," Monroe said quietly, "if we use the bomb, we'll have to modify our warp core to trigger it properly. It would mean sacrificing our way home," Wright finished. "I know, but we have no choice. Survival now, finding our way home later." The crew worked frantically. In engineering, Miller installed the alien component, marveling at how well it integrated with their systems. "Warp drive is online," he reported finally, "but I've had to modify it to emit the pulse Clark suggested." "Stand by," Wright ordered. He turned to Porter. "Bring us in close. Point-blank range." The Dauntless surged forward, heading directly toward the much larger Zithari vessel. The alien ship fired continuously, but Wright had guessed correctly. They weren't prepared for such a direct approach. "They're trying to back away," Monroe noted. "Stay with them," Wright ordered. "Clark, status on the pulse?" "Ready, Captain. Fire!" The modified warp core emitted a strange pulse that rippled through space. When it hit the Zithari ship, their shields flickered visibly. "Their shields are down," Porter shouted. "Firing all weapons." The Dauntless unleashed everything it had left, aiming directly at the Zithari command center. The alien ship's hull buckled under the assault. Secondary explosions cascaded across its surface. "The other Zithari vessels are still coming," Monroe warned. Wright opened a channel to the damaged Zithari ship. "Attention, Commander Vraxel. Your vessel is crippled, and the rest of our fleet will be here before your reinforcements. Provide us with safe passage, or face complete destruction." There was a long pause before Vraxel's image appeared, his blue face now streaked with darker blue that might have been blood. "You bluff," the alien commander said weakly. "You have no fleet." Wright smiled coldly. "Are you willing to bet your life on that? You've seen what one desperate human ship can do. Imagine what a dozen could accomplish. The Zithari commander stared for a long moment, then lowered his 4 eyes. Safe passage. Granted.